Thanks for being here. Before I dive into the principles of humane leadership, I want to take you back to one of the most defining and painful moments of my life. Okay, I'm going to take you back to the year 2003. It was a regular morning, like any other, when I was getting ready for work. And I had just stepped out of the shower, and then bam, without warning, I collapsed to the floor on my bathroom tile. My lower back had locked up and I could not move. I was paralyzed from the waist down. I was alone, confused, and terrified. So, in that moment of crisis, I did what most of us would do if you're, working a work day, you started in the morning and this happens. I called my boss to explain why I physically could not make it into the office. So, what I got in return wasn't concern or care, not even a question of, oh my goodness, are you okay? Is there anything we can do? No, it was an accusation of insubordination by a boss who enjoyed exerting power over others. So that phone call wasn't just the breaking point. It was the culmination of 2 years of trying to survive in a toxic work culture. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, worry and anxiety or almost expectations of the daily grind, if you will. My mental health deteriorated and it was affecting my job performance to the point where, I was just walking around like a zombie going through the motions. But I did not know what the stress was doing to my body until the emergency room doctor asked me to rate my level of stress at work from a scale of 1 to 10. And I looked at him and I said, Doc, it's 25. And he said, yeah, you've had so much cortisol and adrenaline rushing through your body for such a long period of time that your body could not sustain it anymore. So it literally broke down. So I ended up out of work and on disability for about 3 months. And eventually I recovered physically, but the emotional toil took longer because that was an instance of trauma that took a while to recover. So that collapse wasn't just my body shutting down. It was a warning. I just could not keep this up any longer. I realized something had to change. And you can get the rest of that story in my book for all the gory details, but that's what led me down the path of writing humane leadership. And that's how I start the book, with my own experience. But this is an experience that millions of people around the world still get to experience day to day. And I also wrote it because no one should have to break their body or their spirit to make an honorable living. So that experience forced me to ask some really hard questions, not just about the workplace, but about leadership itself. How did we get to a place where fear and a disregard for a human being's worth are almost normalized, and where basic human dignity takes a back seat to the demands of those in power? And more importantly, what would it look like if we flipped the script and led completely differently? So, through 2 decades of learning and researching and growing in myself as a leader up all the way to the C-suite, and later interviewing some of the world's top leaders, scholars, and CEOs in my line of work, I uncovered 5 principles that I believe every leader, regardless of your title, where you sit in the hierarchy, you should embody these principles. And all of this is backed by evidence. And they are: one, patience. Surprise! Because growth and making good decisions should not require us to make hasty decisions. It should demand from us to take time and think things through, and also understand that in people-oriented environments, people aren't machines. They have a limit to what they can take on as far as workload is concerned. So we need to exercise patience around that. And I'll get more in depth on patience in a few minutes here. The second one is kindness. Okay. Kindness is not about being nice because empathy, active listening, and compassion are all parts of kindness. Okay. And they're no longer weaknesses. They never were weaknesses. It's just how the world perceived them as soft skills. They imply that they are weaknesses when they are, in fact, hard skills to learn because it takes an immense amount of courage. So these are strengths now in the year 2025 in how you influence others through kindness. We'll get into detail about what that looks like. Okay. The third one is humility because leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating space for other people to shine. The fourth one is advocacy because your people don't just need a boss, they need somebody in their corner who believes in them and will fight for them. And finally, trustworthiness because when people trust you, they will follow you and some of them will run through walls for you. Okay. So all of these principles aren't just nice ideas. Okay. Even though it sounds like common sense, well, guess what? They're not common practice. But when you put them into practice, they can be transformational in creating a high performing culture. And all of it is backed by the evidence. Okay, so for the rest of this presentation, let's dig down a little deeper into those five practices. So I'm going to start with the first one, the first practice of humane leadership, and we're back to patience. Okay, so we live in a culture and society, at least here in the United States, where we're kind of addicted to speed, right? We expect instant replies to emails, fast decisions, quick wins, and when we don't get them, our frustration builds. And impatience at the top does some real damage because it trickles down fast and it leads to rushed decisions and a culture of fear and anxiety, right? People don't naturally acclimate to that because, and when it does happen, and this is almost like an expectation of the culture, it creates immense amount of stress. It crushes creativity and it kills trust. Okay, but patience, real, intentional, courageous patience. I say courageous because you're going to go against the grain when you exercise patience. It lets us slow down just enough to listen to various perspectives, to create self-awareness, to think, to understand what people need before we react. And in that space, we make better decisions, more human decisions. So I coached a leader recently who was in a constant crisis mode. Every email was urgent, every meeting was a sprint. So once we worked on creating space between stimulus and response, slowing down just enough to choose her response with more care and compassion, her relationships improved almost overnight. And by the way, so did her team's performance. So research backs this up. Leaders who lead with patience during times, especially during times of change and high pressure situations, they will see boosts in collaboration, creativity, and well-being. Especially in moments of uncertainty, patience becomes the force that calms the chaos. And here's something else, okay? Because patience is so often misconstrued. Patience isn't passive. It's not about sitting back and waiting for things to happen, okay? It's about staying composed in the face of pressure. So it's active, but it's steady leadership. And that's why I love the U.S. Navy SEAL motto. It goes like this: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. In other words, slow down, not to lose momentum, but to gain precision, to do things right. Okay, let's move to kindness. Okay, let's talk about this very soft and fuzzy word. Okay, kindness isn't exactly a buzz term in most boardrooms. In fact, in a lot of companies, we're right back to it's too soft and too idealistic and maybe even a liability, right? But when kindness becomes part of how we lead, everything changes, okay? Kindness creates safety. It opens space for people to speak freely, make mistakes, and support each other. And the research I have tracked shows something really interesting, okay? Kindness begets kindness. It spreads outwardly. So one kind act from a peer or a coworker with the leader modeling the way triggers another act of kindness and another and another. Sets off this chain reaction. All right, the third component of humane leadership, according to the research, is humility. Okay, and humility. Let's be honest. Humility is often misunderstood in leadership circles, even to this day. Some people think humility means, downplaying your strengths or being meek and humble, sort of like Jesus of Nazareth, right? So now we have images, these religious images of humble people, being so self-sacrificing for others, right? And so we have images of in the corporate space, it's like, oh, there's no way I can be a humble leader because people will walk all over me, okay? These are all false. This is just false realities and false beliefs that we kind of pick up from media and other places. Real humility is about knowing who you are and who you're not, and it's having the self-awareness to understand your own limitations. To say, for example, hey guys, I don't have all the answers. And it's the courage to invite feedback, to listen more than you speak, and to surround yourself with people who may be smarter than you in the key areas of the business. Perhaps somebody on the front lines, a customer facing employee who understands things more on a granular level than you do, right? So let's do a quick thought experiment, okay? Take a moment to think about the leaders you've trusted the most, okay? You got a person in mind? Think about that person. Okay, so they probably weren't the loudest in the room or the smartest or the most brash or someone that sought attention, right? They were probably the ones that gave other people credit and shined the spotlight on the team. They probably owned their mistakes and genuinely cared about your ideas and your suggestions and listened to your concerns. Does that resonate? Because a humble leader, when we create that kind of space, it creates psychological safety. Okay, so when a leader says, I don't know, let's figure it out together, what do you think happens? They invite open discussion because this is when real collaboration happens. So they invite healthy and lively debate. And they know that it's okay sometimes to even create some healthy friction, right? To bring your best ideas and challenge each other and on why it may not be a good idea. So in these safe spaces where people respect one another, even if they disagree with an idea, they feel heard. So they contribute more, and you get more ideas and more solutions to problems. Okay, and humble leaders create the space that let their people think and make mistakes because that's how we grow. When we fail forward, we're able to increase our capacity next time to handle other problems. And so in giving people that kind of autonomy to allow them the safety to fail forward, to make mistakes, it creates an opportunity to solve real problems, right? So it is an expectation of the humble leader to allow everyone on the team to weigh in on strategy because the answer may be in the room. So if you want to be a more humble leader, there are a few lessons you need to learn. Okay, I'm gonna give you a few of them if you want to take notes. Okay, one is lead with curiosity instead of control. Be curious, ask questions. Two, recognize your power, but choose to use your power in the service of others, not in domination over them. because that's going to increase stress and anxiety in people. Okay, number three, let go of your ego. Ego builds walls. Humility builds bridges. Number four, never stop learning. Humble leaders are great because they continue to learn and evolve and adapt to new environments. And that's what we need to do is to increase our learning. Okay. And then number five is humility starts with three simple words. Help me understand. So that phrase, help me understand, can shift a conversation. It can repair a broken relationship or even open up a new idea you never would have seen on your own, right? Help me understand. That goes back to curiosity. So humility is the foundation for the trust that most organizations need now more than ever. Let's move to advocacy. This is the fourth one, okay? Leaders advocate for others. And by the way, this is one of the most underrated superpowers of humane leadership. To advocate means to use your power to do three things: right the wrongs, protect your people, and believe in their potential. Right the wrongs, protect your people, and I would also add protect your culture if you have a healthy, high-performing culture, and believe in your people's potential. So on that last note, let me expand on that a little bit. Believe in people before they believe in themselves takes advocacy, okay? Let me share a quick story about this. 23 years ago, I worked for a boss. His name is Bruce. He's in my book. Bruce was the best leader I ever worked for. So 5 months into the job, Bruce puts me in charge of this high stakes council with some heavy hitters on it. He basically nominated me, and I was voted in as the new chair of that council. He pulled quite a few strings. And so I was thrust into this new role and that I had no experience in. But let me tell you, yeah, I was terrified, no doubt. But Bruce saw something in me that I could not see yet in myself. He saw my potential. And so he stretched me in that direction. And let me tell you, that kind of belief lit the fire in me. And I was able to rise up to the occasion. So advocating for people often begins with seeing potential they may not realize they have, just like the example I just gave you. It's not naive optimism, okay? It's leadership that builds people up. So research calls this the Pygmalion effect. It's when leaders expect great things from their people, and then people tend to rise up to the occasion. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But that belief always starts with you, the leader, believing in that person. Finally, we arrive at the final pillar of humane leadership, and that is trustworthiness. And honestly, it may be the most powerful one of all, okay? Because without trust, folks, nothing else is going to stick. You can be brilliant, inspiring, a top producer. All of your stakeholders may love you because you create results, et cetera, et cetera. But if your people don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. At best, they're just gonna comply and just, basically yield to your authority. And at worst, they'll just disengage. And now you have a bigger problem, a workforce of low morale and low performance. And that's not very good for business. So what does trustworthiness look like in action? It starts with one simple principle. Do what you say you will do. Always, every single time. Do what you say you will do. So that might mean following through on a promised, strategy, update, whatever your promises are. You want to deliver on your promises, or giving people honest feedback about the current reality. What's the business's current reality, rather than give vague corporate speak. Your employees are going to see right through that. So when things are uncertain, you give the full truth, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, okay? People need to know where they stand. And that's what creates trust. So, by the way, trustworthy leaders are not perfect. And don't expect people to want perfection from you. No, no, but they do need honesty, consistency, and care. And that's what will lead to trust. Okay, I want to transition to a couple of ways to practice more trustworthy behaviors. Okay, number one is be predictably human. So your team needs to know what version of you they're going to get on any given day. We don't want too many versions. We don't want masks to be put on and taken off on any given day. Okay. So if you're calm in one moment and defensive and dismissive the next, people don't really know who you are. So they're not going to engage with you at a deeper level. They're probably going to back away a little bit from you. Okay. And when maybe even walk on eggshells because they don't know who you truly are. So trustworthy leaders are emotionally steady. They are consistent and they make people feel safe, even when the news isn't good. Okay, the other thing that they do is, well, when you say, okay, I got that wrong, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it, there's ownership there, right? And that's ownership increases trust. And by the way, owning mistakes doesn't make you weak, okay? Unless you operate from hubris, right? Yes, that's why we want to check our egos at the door, okay? What happens is when you own your mistakes out loud, it makes you real, it makes you authentic. So it speaks to your integrity, it speaks to your values. And that's who people will follow to the ends of the earth, okay? So another trick to increase your trustworthiness, catch people doing things right. Because in places where people are not valued, bosses walk around trying to do what? Catch mistakes, right? So they can enforce their authority. So by catching people doing things right and praising them on the spot, it reinforces the very behaviors you want to see more of. And it shows people that you see them, right? That you value the work that they're doing. People want to be seen by their leaders. So you have to create more opportunities for them to be seen. So these are the daily acts of leadership that build real grounded trust, okay? And here's the bottom line. Trustworthiness is not a personality trait. It's a series of decisions you make every day. One conversation, one choice, one action at a time. And when your people trust you, they're going to bring all of the things you want: more creativity, more resilience, and really more effort in the work that they're doing. And that's what humane leadership makes possible. Okay, in recapping, and I'm going to bring you home now. When we lead with patience, kindness, humility, and advocacy and trustworthiness, we're not just building better teams, we're building better humans. And that's where real change begins. Thank you very much for your time.